Hello friends, Namaskar. Welcome to Dr.RAjeshverma's YouTube channel. In this particular video, we'll be talking about learning, its meaning and definition. Let us start with the meaning of learning. Gaining or acquisition of knowledge or skill by practice, experience, observation or being taught. So there are the four things I'm talking about here as far as meaning is concerned. This is a online dictionary meaning, how that dictionary defines the learning. See, the acquisition of knowledge through four means. Either you acquire your knowledge through the practice, either experience, observation, or someone teaches you or you are being taught. So this is a crude or you can say literary meaning of learning. Then one more another that meaning I want to discuss with you. The gain knowledge that led to permanent change in human behavior or animal behavior. So whenever I talk about behavior, that is applied to both human as well as animals. This means the gain knowledge that led to permanent change in behavior. So again I want to discuss one point with you, that is share with you, that the behavior here doesn't mean the human behavior. So it's a comprehensive word that includes the animal behavior too. Now let us define what is learning. So the definitions which I'm going to share with you, I have taken from various reference books. So these are not exhaustive one. For the examination purpose, you have to refer more books and learn this definition as well as understand this definition. So let us say how NCRT defines learning. So very simple words. Any relatively permanent change in behavior or behavioral potential produced by experience. Here they have reduced to come down to only one concept, one activity, that is experience. They have left out a practice. They have left out the acquisition of skill or something being taught, etc., etc. What that online dictionary was talking about. So here NCRT defines that there is due to some experience, there is a permanent change in your behavior or behavioral potential. But one point here is that permanent change or behavioral potential has to be executed by that particular experience. Then only we call it there is a occurrence of learning. How that Omrod defines learning. Learning is a long-term change in mental representations or associations as a result of experience. Here little bit of change in the wordings, or that Omrod has taken a different path to define the learning. He says it's a long-term change. Relatively, it's a similar concept as a permanent change. In what? In mental representations, how we represent the information in our cognitive domain, or how we associate between the various concepts, various ideas and thought process, which results from the experience. So by virtue of experience, there occurs a change in your mental representations of ideas and concepts or information and how they associate with each other. So due to that, there comes a change and we call it as a learning. If I want to describe this learning in a simple words, is permanent modification in behavior due to experience or practice. So this is punchline of learning. The change that occurs in human or animal behavior, and that is to be permanent due to either practice or experience. This is the concise and one of the best definition of learning. I feel that you could get this point. Now let us go for some introductory part of the learning. So if we closely analyze these two or these three definitions of learning, and you include that meaning too, then we come with a conclusion that there are three major components in these three definitions. What are that? The first one is the relatively permanent change. The second one is the modification of behavior. And third one is the practice, experience, and observations. So these are the three components which are commonly found in almost all type of definitions given by the various psychologists or behavioral scientists of learning. So what are that? Let us define each this component in brief. The first one is the relatively permanent change. What does it mean? It has three words: relatively, permanent, and change. So let us define these three words conclusively. Together, what they convey. The first, what they say is, it means, that is, a relatively permanent change means when we acquire knowledge by virtue of experience, observation, or practice, the sum part of it results in the modification in brain circuitry. What is brain circuitry? That is your neural mechanism that is set in your brain in order to make the record of the information. Hence, it can be said that learning is a function of long-term memory. Let me explain you in simple words. The moment we acquire some information, that information has to acquire by either we acquire by observation, practice, or some experience. Suppose we acquire some information. That information, when it travels through your sense organs to your brain, some part of that information makes some organic changes in your brain. Now, there is a word used here, some part. Why not all? Because the cognitive functions, the cognitive resources of the brain are, limited. Due to that limitation, brain is unable to process all of the information received from the sense organs simultaneously. It processes the information what is travels, enters to the higher order processing system. Due to that, there is the partial information only travels to your brain and it gets processed, and due to that processing, there are organic changes in your neural circuitry, neural mechanism. And due to that changes are permanent, and due to that changes, we learn something or we retain the information, and we call that the information has been retained in the long-term memory. That's why we call it as a learning is the function of long-term memory. If you do not have a long-term memory system in your brain, obviously there is no learning, because the moment you acquire information, we act, we react and respond, but in future we won't be able to respond to that particular same if that same information comes to our brain, because there is no permanent organic changes in your brain system. So that is known as relatively permanent change in the brain. The second component that has been we have gleaned from the various definitions is the modification of behavior. What's that? What is the modification of behavior? We all know, but how scientifically define it? It means that the change that occurred in neural circuitry inside the brain is expected to be expressed through corresponding behavioral outcomes. Suppose you are the moment you born and you are a 6-month-old kid. That time you were not able to tell what is 2 plus 2 is equal to. You won't be able to tell because there was no learning process taken place. Why there is no learning process? Because there was no neural circuitry changes in your brain. But now you can tell very well 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. You can very well tell because you have learned that there is, as far as this mathematical expression or mathematical answer is question is concerned, there is a permanent change in your neural circuitry inside your brain. So due to that, you are making corresponding behavior. If you ask someone what is, if you divide 8 by 4, you are not going to tell it is a 4. You are going to tell it is a 2 because the behavior is your correspondent to the question it is put up to you, and what are the neural circuits, neural changes that occurred in your brain. The resulting behavioral outcomes will differ from the behavior that occurred prior to the organic change in the brain. What does that mean? It means, suppose your teacher taught you today 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. So you remembered that, you learned that, and due to that information there is a changes in your brain circuitry. Now, if you go to market with your parents and you purchase something that is 3 items and 2 items you purchase, if your mother asks, how much items we have purchased today? Certainly you are going to tell it's 5. Your mother will feel proud of you that my kid can answer a mathematical question right, correct. Now your change in the permanent change in the behavior, and that change is the permanent. So what is modification? Prior to learning that mathematical expression and after learning that expression, there is a change in your behavior. So if you subtract, if you can see the difference between the post learning and prior learning in your behavior, that is known as the modification of behavior. Getting my point? And the learning must be distinguished. One important point here, the NCERT has emphasized on this point, the learning must be distinguished from the behavioral changes that are neither permanent nor learned. Several times in your life you face various situations, various challenges. These challenges comes to your life at every step, and you gain lots of information at every step. But that doesn't mean that you are learning everything, because the information that makes the permanent change in your behavior is only called as the learning. So this is the focus point of the NCERT as far as the modification of behavior is concerned. The third component that we glean from the definition and the meaning of the learning is the practice, experience and observation. What's that? What's practice? You know what practice is? The repetition of an activity. If you repeat an activity several times, that you are practicing that activity. So that is simple word, practice. Then what's the experience? It's a very interesting psychological variable here, component here. What is experience is? Being face to face with some emotion provoking event or stimuli. This is a very important point here. Anything that provokes emotion in you, either it is a stimuli or some event or some phenomena that creates a certain type of experience in you. Why it is, suppose you are moving in a garden and you see a very beautiful rose smiling at you. Now, the beauty of that rose has provoked emotion in you. So now you experience that whenever I see a beautiful flower, a rose, you will feel elated. Why? Because that is your experience. By virtue of your experience. That experience has occurred, that phenomenon has occurred because that particular flower has provoked an emotional response in you. Getting my point? That is known as the experience. The third one is the observation. Perceiving a phenomena that is intense enough to cause change in the behavior. What you observe through your senses. I want to make point here, very dear friends, for you is observation is not limited to your visual sense. You can observe through your sensory, that is auditory sense too, or other senses also. So that is perceiving a phenomena that is intense enough to cause change in the behavior. Suppose you are moving in a car, suddenly you see your car tire gets flat. Now your steering start dwindling, or you start seeing some wobbling in your vehicle. So you just park to the left side of the road or safer side of the road. At that moment, you observed something unusual in your vehicle, and due to that, you could make out there is something wrong with that vehicle. And when you came out, you get alighted from your vehicle, you found that one of the rear tire is flat. The next time you see the same phenomena or same wobbling in your vehicle, you will get understand by virtue of your experience and the observation of that wobbling, you will understand that there is something wrong or there is some flat tire. So dear friends, that is intense enough, that wobbling of the vehicle is intense enough to create a change in your behavior, and that change is permanent one. So what does all these means? These component means, it means that change in behavior that occur other than the result of physiological maturation, fatigue, use of alcohol or drugs, or onset of mental illness or dementia. There are the few incidents, objects or events I discussed with you, that the changes which occur by virtue of these things, that by virtue of your maturation, by virtue of some fatigue, alcohol or drugs, or onset of some mental illness or dementia, that won't be considered as a learning. What is maturation? I'll discuss these points in your succeeding or subsequent slides. Fatigue, you do get tired, or some people start using alcohol, and due to that alcohol they face some problems, physiological, psychological problems. That is not learning. Or some drug abuse, people's due to that their behavior gets modified, but that is also not learning. There is some mental illness or some dementia. So that change in the behavior that occurs by virtue of these things, we don't call as a learning. Learning is the only by practice, experience or the observation. So let us briefly discuss something more about the learning. Learning involves a sequence of psychological events and differs from. I told you, learning is not a comprehensive phenomena. It has some particular specific its events, its sequence, and it differs from various things. From what it differs? First one is the maturation, which I told in the previous slide, which I was discussing it. What is maturation? Change is attributed to growth and development due to genetic blueprint. The moment you are born or conceived, that time you receive 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs, 23 from your father, 23 from your mother. What is that chromosomes carries? That carries a blueprint of your growth when you born. So due to that blueprint, suppose your eyes are blue or your eyes are some brown. That and due to that you gain your height. There is a muscular strength you gain. That is not learning. That is known as the maturation. So what is one thing or two important point here, that is you see growth and development. What is the difference between a growth and development? Dear friend, growth has its limit. Means there is a physiological or psychological changes that occur to your body. Whereas a development can be positive as well as negative. Means there is suppose you the moment in the continuum of the life you gain various years, various experiences, but your height grows up to a certain level, certain years of your life, but your experience keeps on developing. So this is a basic difference between the growth and development. And maturation, the change of behavior that occurs due to maturation, cannot be considered as learning. The second point is the habituation. Due to our habit, there occurs a permanent change in behavior. That also we do not consider as a learning. But by the way, what is habituation? The continuing exposure to stimulus. If you are exposed to a stimulus continuously, what that do? It leads to development of orienting reflexes and gradual weakening of these up to the level of undetectable is a kind of behavior that is known as habituation. What is habituation? In simple words, I'll let you know. If you are exposed to a stimulus continuously, for example, some of your relatives are just residing near a busy railway station, and you in the summer vacations you went to meet them. One afternoon, after the lunch, when you are just relaxing in your bed, the train came. And gave a big sound, siren, that disturbs you, and that vibration by virtue of the movement of the train also disturbs you. You ask your that relatives, "Hi, how you survive here? So much disturbance, commotion here." They said, "Oh no, we don't feel that." And you stay there for almost a week, and you will be surprised that the earlier disturbance that occurred due to that siren of the train, now you are not facing that disturbance. How that occurs? That is due to the habit or habituation, because you are continuously exposed to the stimulus. That stimulus initially developed the orienting reflexes in you. Reflexes, that sound of that siren sound, that makes you disturbed. But continuously if you are exposed to that, that orienting reflexes get weakened by the time, and finally they lead to a level where it becomes undetectable. That is the situation, that is the time that is known as habituation. The third important aspect from which that learning differs is the performance. What is performance? Performance is a person's object behavior or response or action. But see, there is some stimuli or situation or event in that we try to do something, we respond to that. And if someone observes our that response, so in the eyes of others, that is my performance. Means some response or action or behavior that must be observable. If I observe a beautiful sparrow sitting at my home, if I observe that and do not manifest a physical behavior, and that is others cannot observe that my behavior, that is not my performance. But if I say, hi, what a beautiful sparrow it is, beautiful bird it is, see, these are my expressions. If observed by someone, they tell the individual is performing. That is some response or action or some observed behavior. So dear friends, what is learning? Learning occurs in different ways. There are different techniques through which learning occurs. The simplest kind of learning is called as conditioning, which is of two types: classical conditioning and instrumental or operant conditioning. So we'll record each video for each type of learning. So other than these two, that is other than the classical conditioning and instrumental conditioning, are the observational learning, cognitive learning, verbal learning, concept learning, and skill learning. So these type of learnings we'll be discussing in our subsequent videos. And if you want to know something more that, you can just write to me or in my comment box, or you can write to me through my email. So dear friends, these are my references. You can always cross check them for my contents. If you find something different or something which does not match this, that you can put up a question to me. So the next discussion will be, can you tell, yes, factors affecting the learning. What are that factors that significantly and considerably influence the process of learning? Do you know what is learning? I think right till the time you could get. So one more time I'll define what's learning. Learning means the permanent change in behavior by virtue of practice and experience. Remember, permanent change, practice and experience. So this was the learning meaning and definition, my dear friends. How you felt about my videos, how you felt about my contents of the videos, you can just respond by mentioning that your emotional experiences through the words in the comment box as well as on the email which is in front of you, that is vermasujit@yahoo.com. I always appreciate your comments, whether they are appreciative or critical, because these comments makes my videos and my performance better as time passes. So dear friends, thanks again for watching this video.